Good afternoon. We're doing it live and continuing to do more at 4 weekday afternoons right here. Mottek On Money, live on the air on 790 KABC, streaming live online worldwide at KABC.com. And the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, KABC.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. Save at 790 KABC for the very latest on the massive Pacific Palisades fire, the deadly Eaton fire in the San Gabriel Valley, the Altadena and Pasadena areas, the Woodley fire in the Valley, and the Hearst fire in Sylmar, the so-called Tyler fire now in Acton, and now Santa Monica in focus with an active fire reported at 4th Street in Adelaide, a block up from San Vicente, mandatory evacuations now north of Montana from the beach to 11th Street, and now everything north of Wilshire and west of 10th Street. The new order pushes right up to the 3rd Street Promenade in the current windstorm with blowtorch conditions impacting homes and businesses. Godspeed to all and the brave firefighters affected by this current firestorm emergency. Prayers for everyone in the path of these devastating, out-of-control fires at this moment. Now, this very serious fire emergency continues this afternoon with fierce, blustery Santa Ana winds, sometimes gusting to hurricane-force winds, fanning the flames, creating a nightmare situation out there. Damage assessment underway in some neighborhoods, including the Pacific Palisades, where the firefight continues. Nearly 16,000 acres have burned there. Containment still officially at 0. The Pacific Palisades fire, now the most destructive in Los Angeles history, with an estimated 1,000 structures destroyed, tens of thousands of people under evacuation orders right now in the Los Angeles area, and more than 1 million are without power. Compounding the tragedy, there was no water in the fire hydrants overnight to fight the fire in the Palisades. Heartbreaking situation for the firefighters and for the residents and business owners whose homes and businesses were destroyed. Joining us live now, Los Angeles business and civic leader, philanthropist Rick Caruso, developer of Palisades Village, shopping destination in the area where the firestorm occurred. Rick Caruso, also former president of the Los Angeles Police Commission and former LA DWP commissioner. And when he ran for mayor of LA, he had the support of the entire business community here in Los Angeles. Unfortunately, his family and businesses have been impacted by this fire disaster. Rick Caruso, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
It's good to hear your voice, and thank you for having me on.
Rick Caruso, give us an update on what's happening there in Pacific Palisades, first of all.
Well, as you said, I mean, it's complete devastation. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it literally looks like a carpet bomb landed on the whole Palisades community, just wiping it out. The business district is pretty much gone for the most part. Our project, the Palisades Village, thank God, remains standing. There's some fire damage, but remains standing, but everything around it has burned down. All the residential areas around us are gone. The Alphabet Street area of the Palisades is absolutely devastated. Churches, schools, libraries, completely wiped out. It's really beyond belief. And I want to thank the first responders, LA Fire, County Fire, but our firefighters are just absolute heroes. LAPD heroes. They've been doing all they can do to save structures, save businesses, and certainly save lives. But unfortunately, I think there's been a great failure of leadership, and we're seeing that play out. And I feel terrible for the people that are lost their homes and businesses, because I think a lot of it could have been, if not fully prevented, certainly mitigated.
On there live with Rick Caruso, and sadly, your family has been impacted as well. Rick Caruso, tell us about how your family lost homes in the area as well.
Yeah, well, my daughter lost her home in the Palisades, and my son's in the Palisades. We thought his home was lost last night. It appears to be intact, which is great. We're thankful for that. And like I said, Palisades Village has some damage, but it's standing there. But I, obviously feel terrible for my daughter. But listen, here the main thing is, as a city, we've got to rise above this. We've got to take some time, digest it. We got to support everybody. We have a lot of people that financially are going to be severely impacted, small business owners and small landlords. There's so many independent businesses in the Palisades. The majority of the businesses up there are small businesses, and they're not going to have the financial wherewithal to help. And we got to rebuild homes and businesses. It's one of the greatest communities in our country, the Palisades, and it will come back, and it's going to come back strong. And Tina and I and the family, we're going to lean in and be a partner and help out and get businesses back up and running. And we'll do it. We can do it. But at the same time, we got to ask some tough questions on why this happened. Why did we not have water in the fire hydrants last night? Why were the firefighters left to try to fight fires with empty hoses? Why wasn't brush cleared in the Santa Monica Mountains? It was just so much fuel up there. And those are failures. And I think in a large part, people may claim there's negligence, and there very well may be on the city's part. So it's going to be some tough questions, but we deserve to get answers.
On there live with Rick Caruso, as far as the water situation is concerned, and you served as an LADWP commissioner in the past. What happened there? And it must have been absolutely heartbreaking for everyone there to realize that there was no water to fight the fires last night.
Can you imagine it, Frank? We're the second largest city in the United States, one of the wealthiest cities in the world, and we don't have water in our fire hydrants. What a massive failure that is. And to see these poor firefighters, because they were devastated, because, they run to a crisis. They run to the fire. These men and women are programmed to save buildings and save lives and put themselves in harm's way. They're incredible people. And they had to stand there watching homes burn down and businesses burn down. We owe them a debt of gratitude, but we also owe them an apology that we didn't give them the tools they needed to do their job. And then on top of it, the city and the mayor cut the budget for the fire department a couple months ago. Our priorities are upside down. The number one priority can only be the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And that starts with fire, paramedics, and police. And I think our leadership has violated that sacred duty. So certainly it was heartbreaking. And again, I feel for so many people that just don't have the resources, to rebuild. So the city has got to come up with a whole bunch of programs, cut the red tape, cut costs, eliminate fees, waive any kind of fees, and encourage people, support people to rebuild their businesses and rebuild their homes. And hopefully we can get some state help and some federal help in doing that also.
On there live with Rick Caruso, and the fire emergency continues as we speak here. Rick Caruso, as far as this, how this all unfolded yesterday morning, of course, we got plenty of warning that there were going to be very dangerous wind conditions with winds gusting to hurricane force winds. And there's nothing more terrifying to be in a situation where you have hurricane force winds and fire in the mix. What about the failure there to essentially miscalculate how serious the situation potentially was already yesterday?
Well, we all saw the notices that came out, right? And these notices were, had horrific language. I frankly thought it was overdone. I couldn't believe that, catastrophic winds, life-threatening winds. We all saw this. So how the government agencies that are responsible and the leadership, the city council members, county supervisors, the mayor, knowing all of this, how there couldn't have been more done. Now, maybe they did everything they could, but again, I know they could have cleared brush for years, and they didn't. And fire hydrants should work unless you're in some third world country. And so I think the residents of Los Angeles deserve better, and they deserve answers. And the city's got to work hard to rebuild their lives.
A lot of new attention focused on these encampment fires, homeless encampment fires. The fire department responds to so many of these situations, oftentimes under overpasses and so forth, and in dangerous areas. Of course, the cause of all of these fires are being examined now. But what about that important aspect of what's happening here in the Los Angeles area?
Yeah, you're right, Frank. It's critically important. I mean, we had the fire under the freeway interchange that impacted the structural integrity of the freeway. And that was complete mismanagement again by our city, allowing the encampment should be down there to that degree, knowing they light fires down there. We've got to get our priorities back, and we've got to just use our heads and have some common sense. We've got to clean up our streets, and we've got to expect from our elected officials to make some good, smart, and tough decisions. And that includes getting the homeless off the streets, giving them the services that they need. But don't allow people to camp on the streets anymore. Don't allow them to take over MacArthur Park and destroy businesses around MacArthur Park. Our priorities are backwards, and I hope and pray that with the devastation that we've seen in the Palisades, it brings very positive action. I think it will. I really think it will. I think people are just, this was absolutely the last straw of watching a city being completely mismanaged.
We're on the air live with Rick Caruso. People must be absolutely heartbroken, outraged, and really sickened about what's happened here, and horrified, having gone through that terrifying night of fire and wind. And what are you hearing from the folks there in Palisades Village and elsewhere who endured this awful situation overnight?
Well, as you know, people were scrambling. I mean, it was a horrific scene. You know, people stuck in traffic, abandoning their cars, running down the street. So we have a lot of friends in the Palisades that have lost their homes and lost their businesses. And I know with us, getting word that our daughter lost her home, we all were evacuated also. We have the great blessing, and we count our blessings, Frank, like so many of us do. We're all together, we're safe, we're healthy, and we're happy. But all those dreams in your home are gone. The structure is not what's important, but it's the dreams that, you know, make your life so dear, and the memories. And I really feel for people. I really do. So I'm sorry for them.
Now, more heartbreak when it comes to the insurance situation. We tried to reach the insurance commissioner today, and apparently declined our invitation here. But what about the insurance situation here now in California?
Well, as you know, we already had a problem. We have so many people that have had their insurance cut off, denied, and had to divert to state insurance, which doesn't do necessarily everything that needs to be done. But the state, I think we're at the point now, insurance is so expensive, it's also impacting the affordability to a great degree of people getting and buying a home, if they can even get insurance. And then on top of it, now after a fire like this, the rates are going to go even higher, and insurance companies, I believe, are just going to take a pass. So I think the state's going to have to get involved, or the federal government get involved to provide insurance coverage and do it at a low rate.
We're on the air live with Rick Caruso, and now the fire emergency continues, but certainly in the Palisades Village area there, the recovery will be tough. Are you going to be leading that effort there in the Palisades Village and throughout the city, really?
You know what? I'm going to stand shoulder to shoulder with that community until everything gets rebuilt. And Tina feels the same way, and so do all of my kids. We're so proud to be a part of the Palisades community, so grateful for the support that they have given us at the Palisades Village and the businesses of our retailers and restaurants. And we're going to be with them, absolutely. And we're going to do it proudly, and that town is going to come back better and stronger than it ever was. There's great pride in the Palisades. So I am optimistic, and I'm excited about getting to work. And that work starts now. I've already met with our team, and we're coming up with a whole lot of ideas and programs. We're going to support all the small businesses in our retail project. We're going to make sure they have the capital to get reopened and to stay in business, just like we did at COVID. And, you know, we're going to do all the right things. But we're going to be back, Frank. I promise you. That town's going to be back.
Keep an open line to you. Rick Caruso, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon. Thank you for your leadership by example, and we wish you and your family all the best. And again, very sorry to hear about the impact overnight. And And certainly we send up prayers to all those who are still impacted by this. Rick Caruso, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank. God bless you, and God bless Los Angeles, and let's all stick together and rebuild our great city. We can do it.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Rick Caruso, Los Angeles business, civic leader, and philanthropist, developer of Palisades Village, shopping destination in the area where that firestorm happened overnight. Of course, also the other most famous shopping destinations here in Los Angeles, including the Grove, Americana Brand, Commons and Calabasas, and the list goes on. Should also be noted, former president of the Los Angeles Police Commission and former LADWP commissioner. And when he ran for mayor of Los Angeles, as this audience knows, he had the support of the entire business community. Rick Caruso, live with us here. Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. KBC, continue our fire coverage in just a moment. Stocks closing mostly higher today in what turned out to be a choppy day of trading. Despite a continued climb in the benchmark government treasury yields, concerned about inflation out there now. The notes from the Fed's last big policy-setting meeting released today show that almost all of the Fed managers saw increased upside risk to the inflation outlook as of last month, and were considering the likely impacts of potential changes in trade and immigration policy under the second Trump administration. The Dow did come in for a closing gain today of 107 points at 42,635. That was the Dow's first gain in 3 trading sessions. The S&P 500 moved higher by 9 points to 5,918. And the Nasdaq came in for a closing loss today, down about 11 points to 19,479, closing lower for the 7th time in the past 9 trading sessions. We did see the yield on the 10-year note moving higher for the 4th straight session to 4.69%, the highest we've seen since last April, and that's the one that impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates out there. The notes from the Fed's last meeting showed a high degree of uncertainty, with one economist pointing out that the word uncertainty appeared about 12 times in the notes from the Fed's last policy-setting meeting. The VIX index, the volatility index, which spiked yesterday, pulling back about 1% today. Gold moving higher, $5.30 right now at $2,677 and change. Oil, which has been on a tear lately, pulling back 10 cents at the moment. It's $73.22 a barrel in New York. Checking the cryptos now, we see Bitcoin up about 1,000, back to 94,892. It's been all over the place. Ethereum up 22 at 3,321. And Doge at the moment at 34 cents. Among the winners today, eBay shares moving higher by about 10%. On the flip side, Moderna stock continues to gyrate, down about 9% on the day. Let's bring up the magnificent one, NVIDIA, which made a splash at the Consumer Electronics Show this week, where their CEO spoke and actually helped some other names in that space. NVIDIA shares closed down 3 cents today at 140.11. Micron Technology shares got a boost following the comments from the head of NVIDIA this week, and pulled back today, down $2.50 at $99.41 a share. The oil names have been moving higher lately. Let's bring on ExxonMobil here, pulling back nearly $2 today at $106.93. And Chevron, which is in the process of moving out of California, the headquarters moving to Houston, right now did end the day higher by nearly $1 to $150.30 a share. And now the latest news for you right here on 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Stay tuned to 790 KBC for the very latest on the firestorm emergency ongoing here in Southern California this afternoon, with fierce blustery Santa Ana winds, sometimes gusting to hurricane force, fanning the flames, creating a nightmare situation out there in many areas. Damage assessment continues in some neighborhoods, including the Pacific Palisades, where nearly 16,000 acres have burned so far. Containment, by the way, still officially at 0. The business district there, as we heard, has been decimated, but Palisades Village has survived the flames. The Pacific Palisades fire, now the most destructive in Los Angeles history, with an estimated 1,000 structures destroyed in that area. Tens of thousands of people still under evacuation orders in the Los Angeles area, and more than 1 million are without power. There was no water in the fire hydrants overnight, as we heard from Rick Caruso. No water in the fire hydrants overnight to fight the fire in the Palisades, a heartbreaking situation for the firefighters and for the residents and business owners who lost their homes and businesses. Joining us live now is the Honorable Dennis ZINE, former Los Angeles City Council member, former LAPD sergeant, current LAPD reserve officer, with something like 56 years of service to the City of Angels. Dennis ZINE, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
My pleasure to be with you again, Frank.
Your reaction to these epic firestorms that we've seen in the last 24 hours?
They're absolutely nightmarish. And I can remember years ago when the Bel Air fire took place, nearly 500 homes burned. When Bel Air went through a similar situation, but this has been all over this Southern California region. It's massive. I visited Topanga Canyon today. The route over Topanga Canyon is restricted to law enforcement, fire service, and it's still smoking. You can still see flames, and it's just a devastating environment that so many areas were impacted. We knew there was going to be a huge amount of wind. There was going to be prediction, very, very aggressive wind, and it proved true. So we've got a lot of people who've been displaced. We've got a lot of businesses destroyed. The firefighters are still there. CAL FIRE had a large presence in the Malibu area this afternoon, and it's very tragic. But this reminds me of what happens when nature takes over, and no matter how many firefighters, no matter how many helicopters, if they can fly, or the super scoopers, if they can actually fly, because it was so severe with the winds, they couldn't fly, and they were restricted, and it just got carried away. And then we saw firefighters that couldn't do anything, and I understand the water problem that took place. And then there were the cars that were blocking the road, and they came with a county bulldozer, which was something that you would see in a movie, not in real life, and to just destroy those cars as they were clearing the roadway so the fire department personnel could approach the locations that were already ablaze. I mean, this is a nightmare situation that happened here in the county of Los Angeles City and the other regions of this South Atlantic community.
I don't know if you heard my conversation with Rick Caruso a moment ago, but it was certainly heartbreaking to have no water in the fire hydrants overnight in the Palisades. You, of course, served on the L.A. City Council, and if you were sitting there now, how would you react to that heartbreaking news here?
Well, there's no excuse for that. And I don't know who's responsible. Is it water and power? Is it the systems collapse? Is it we've overbuilt? We don't have enough capacity? Whatever the issue is, and I know the hydrants have a capacity, but that flow has to continue. So whatever went wrong or whatever they overbuilt, whatever the reason, they need to find out and fix it, because this was just extremely devastating for so many people, for so many employers, employees, business, I mean, across the board. And it's still smoking. It's still smoldering. There's still flames in Malibu, as well as the other areas that took off after the initial fire that happened in Pacific Palisades. That area along Pacific Coast Highway, we still have flames that are there. And all the firefighters, doesn't matter how many firefighters you have and how much aircraft, if you can't launch the aircraft and you can't put out those fires, it just spreads and it continues to spread, and it becomes devastating, as we see. It's got a tremendous amount of loss. Billions and billions of dollars in loss. And then the personnel, I know the LAPD has been mobilized. I'm doing my mobilization assignment at this particular time, and they're bringing all forces to assist with this, because it's a massive, massive deployment of personnel assisting the fire department and maintaining control in the communities, because the first thing that takes place is the looters come in and help themselves. So LAPD is mustered up. The chief of police has directed that we do this, and it's 24-hour details. So there's a lot of things taking place. But the bottom line is a lot of people are going to have to answer questions, and hopefully the city council will wake up and find out what happened and make corrections so it doesn't happen again.
Awful to hear that some looting did occur, and it looks like we heard from the sheriff, I believe it was, made some arrests of looters already. What's your message to the looters out there?
Well, looting continues anytime you have a situation where they think there's no control. And that's why I believe that LAPD has gone on this at 12-hour shifts to make sure we've got deployment throughout the city to handle the calls, as well as deploy in the fire areas. So that's just LA. But then you've got the sheriff's department, and we ran into some sheriffs who were on Topanga Canyon, the county area. Law enforcement has to gear up, and anyone who commits those crimes needs to be arrested. And thank goodness that Gascon is gone, and that we have a district attorney who will prosecute these people. And if we don't have law enforcement doing the job, then we can't get the prosecution. So it's got to work hand in hand. And looting just cannot happen. It's something that is so horrendous. The people have lost so much of their property, their personal belongings, and then some person comes by and steals. That's outrageous. So I think law enforcement's gearing up to make sure that doesn't happen.
On the air live with the Honorable Dennis ZINE, former Los Angeles City Council member, former LAPD sergeant with decades of service to the city of Los Angeles. You're also very close to the business community with the United Chambers there in the San Fernando Valley. And we heard from Rick Caruso about rebuilding the Palisades area. And certainly there are also fires now in the valley. What about rebuilding businesses, small businesses especially, that have been impacted by these firestorms?
They've been devastated, and I looked at the insurance companies, and we know insurance companies are trying to back out of California. I don't know what this is going to do when these claims come in. We're talking about not millions, but billions of dollars in claims from these very expensive homes in the Palisades along the area and the commercial area. It's going to be billions of dollars. And what happens when all the insurance companies decide to leave California, particularly Los Angeles County? It's devastating. There's no end to it. But hopefully they can rebuild. Hopefully people can start their lives over again. Employees are now going to be displaced because the business is now gone. I mean, there's the impact. The rippling effect is it's phenomenal how much will happen, the consequences, and how it affects so many people from those owners. Rick Caruso, who I know personally, a wonderful businessman, an investment that he's made in the city of Los Angeles, millions upon millions of dollars. And I'm sure that loss and what he sees happen really breaks his heart because he really loves Los Angeles. He's done everything. I remember when he was a police commissioner, he was always there trying to make sure we had public safety doing the job. So there's many people who are going to be impacted, from the small storekeeper to the people who own the large businesses surrounding this area.
And indeed, Rick Caruso was the president of the police commission back in those days. And let me ask you this, as far as we've been through a lot of disasters here, and you've certainly seen a lot more than I have in your 50-plus years of service to the City of Angels officially. And are we going to see a big FEMA presence here and other help for the people that really need it right now?
I believe we will. I believe that the outgoing president will make arrangements for that. I know that the incoming president of the United States and the governor of California don't get along, at least publicly they don't get along. Hopefully they'll come to a meeting of the minds and say this is for the people, the businesses, the people who've invested in Los Angeles, California, and make sure that we can rebuild. Obviously that'll be construction workers, et cetera. But we need to have a mutual agreement between the federal government and the local government that we come together and make bring these businesses back, because there's a tremendous amount of loss in the opportunities, the jobs, the revenue, et cetera. Families depend on the income that they generate having a business working in this region. So we need to work together on that and not let this partisan division take place where we're divided on that. We need to work together for sure.
A lot of attention focused on the fact that Mayor Bass was out of the country when all of this unfolded, and she's being asked some very tough questions now. What about that aspect of this disaster here?
Well, the mayor, as I understand, was out of the country in Africa. As a former member of Congress, she was asked to sit in for the president at a ceremony, and I understand that. I understand how that works. I understand when she learned what was happening, she was going to return to California. Obviously, it's a long trip, and I've been to South Africa. It's a long trip from South Africa back to Los Angeles. But with Los Angeles and other governments, there's a pecking order. In this case, the council president takes over as mayor. You're the council president, you're acting mayor. So there's always a succession of powers, and that was carried out. So I'm not going to blame the mayor for doing what she was asked to do by, I understand, the president of the United States, representing the United States at the ceremony in South Africa. But the fact of the matter is, the mayor has responsibilities, obligations, and carry those out. I'm not going to blame the mayor for this. The mayor had nothing to do with starting the fire. The mayor obviously wants to serve all the people and make sure business survives and continues to survive. So I'm not going to point the finger at the mayor for doing what she was asked to do by the federal government, the president, representing America at the ceremony that they had in South Africa.
I'm going to salute a lot of businesses out there who are helping the first responders in this current emergency. Some places are offering free food and so forth, and other things for the first responders. Is that Nice to see when you come into a business and get a free cup of coffee or something like that.
Well, we don't take gratuities, but if someone wants to give us a free cup of coffee, and in the old case, when my early stage of
Donuts.
LAPD, donuts, you gotta have a donut and coffee to start the day. Well, now it's a Starbucks and a croissant. So we've graduated from a donut to a croissant.
Oh.
But most businesses are very, very appreciative of the police officers, and I'm working today with my partner Ronnie in a black and white, and we're doing our activities here because they've asked for the reserves to come forward and assist because they're really draining the resources because of what's happening with this massive fire.
Well, we wish you and your partner and the entire department all the best, and all the first responders out there in this current firestorm emergency ongoing. The Honorable Dennis ZINE, former Los Angeles City Council member, longtime LAPD sergeant, still a reserve officer serving the City of Angels tonight. Dennis ZINE, thank you very much for coming to the line.
Thank you, Frank, and good wishes to all of your wonderful listeners. Thank you much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And out to the freeways now, 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. The fire emergency continues here in Southern California with fierce blustery winds, sometimes gusting to hurricane force out there, fanning flames in several locations, creating a nightmare situation, including the Pacific Palisades, where nearly 16,000 acres of burned containment still officially there at zero. The Pacific Palisades fire now considered the most destructive in Los Angeles history, with an estimated 1,000 structures destroyed, tens of thousands of people under evacuation orders throughout the Los Angeles area, and more than 1 million are without power. Following all of this very closely is Chad HANSON, who's a fire ecologist and author of Smokescreen: Debunking Wildfire Myths to Save Our Forests and Climate. Chad HANSON, thanks very much for taking the call here today.
Of course.
You know this area very well. Give us your reaction to this epic disaster here.
Oh, it's just heartbreaking to see the impacts of these communities, both in the Altadena and Pasadena area, Sierra Madre, and also in Pacific Palisades. I know all these areas well and know the communities, know the mountains around the communities, and it's just really hard to see it. It's an extreme circumstance, where we got these really dry conditions. We haven't had much rain at all. We have very, very dry air, and then we've got these extreme Santa Ana winds coming off the desert. And it really is just a combination of things that is creating this circumstance.
All right. Let's take a look at the Palisades, for example. This thing started in the heart of the Palisades, flared up, and created the most destructive fire in Los Angeles history, with more than 1,000 structures destroyed all the way along the ocean there on PCH. And now Santa Monica also threatened. We're watching the situation there with a new evacuation order pushing right up to the 3rd Street Promenade. It's going to be a very nervous night here. Take a closer look at what happened there in the Palisades. Also the fact that the fire hydrants ran out of water overnight as well.
Yeah, I think the main thing that strikes me about this is the need to, at the both state and federal level, to focus attention and resources on community protection, creating fire-safe communities, home hardening, defensible space pruning, evacuation planning and assistance, and allocating the resources and the information and technical expertise to help communities become as fire safe as they possibly can be and have the best possible evacuation plans. And I think we have a lot of room for improvement there in terms of what policymakers can do to help communities.
When you have these blowtorch conditions here, as you noted, with these fierce Santa Ana winds, nothing more terrifying, by the way, to be in those kind of conditions. I've covered many wildfires here in Southern California. It's absolutely terrifying to be in a situation where you have Santa Ana winds gusting to hurricane force, and you have these embers flying all over you and throughout the neighborhood, and starting fires pretty much all over the place. What would your guidance be for the leadership here in Los Angeles in the aftermath of this disaster here?
Well, I mean, right now the main focus is continuing to help people get out of harm's way safely, and the first responders have done an excellent job of that. That really has been their priority. They've been very clear and explicit about that. Firefighters and law enforcement officers, helping people evacuate, and get out of harm's way. And I think that's going to remain the focus as long as these fires are moving. After that, there'll be plenty of conversation, about what can be done to help, people and business, homeowners and businesses rebuild and do it in the best way possible. But right now, there's just so many people still in harm's way.
Certainly, and our hearts go out to all who've lost their homes and businesses, and certainly wish Godspeed to all the first responders, many of them listening here this afternoon. So you've written about this, you've thought about it, Smokescreen Debunking Wildfire Myths to Save Our Forest and Our Climate. What are some of those wildfire myths that you'd like to debunk here this afternoon?
Yeah, great question. I mean, the biggest one, and in my opinion, the most important one, is this notion that wildfires are a forest issue. And it's somehow forest management or removing trees from remote public forests, that's somehow going to protect communities from wildfire. And we just saw a letter today from some members of Congress, from the Congressional Western Caucus, making that argument and saying we need an aggressive increase in the pace and scale of forest management in order to stop tragedies like these fires that have impacted communities in Los Angeles. And I guess I just have to wonder, how would logging on a national forest 30 or 50 miles away have protected Pacific Palisades? It's a misplaced conversation. And so in my view, this is not a time for political opportunism. This is a time to focus on what we should be focusing on, which is how best to protect homes, how best to protect lives and communities from wildfires. And the science, good news is the science is really clear on that. It's home hardening, making homes themselves more fireproof. It's defensible space pruning. It's evacuation planning and assistance. And it's allocating appropriate resources to support those things and providing the technical expertise to communities to make sure that they can do it. And that's really what we need to do, especially after a tragedy like this.
All right, Chad Hanson, thank you very much for taking the call. I'm sure a lot of folks will be relying on your expertise in the aftermath of all this as this fire emergency continues. That's Chad Hanson, fire ecologist and author of Smokescreen, Debunking Wildfire Myths to Save Our Forest and Our Climate. Thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
My pleasure.
This is Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang. Tomorrow, by the way, a National Day of Mourning in honor of President Jimmy Carter, who died recently at the age of 100. The stock market will be closed in honor of President Carter tomorrow. This is Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Frank Mottek here. Did you know that for more than 10,000 years, gold has been the greatest store of value and considered a safe haven asset to preserve your wealth? Now, with the U.S. debt at more than $36 trillion and climbing, the possible recession on the horizon, and the development of the digital dollar, central bank digital currency, it's more critical now than ever before to safeguard your assets like your cash savings and retirement accounts with physical gold. Opening a gold IRA is one of the best ways to secure your wealth and create a stable financial future. Stop worrying about your retirement and the markets and cash savings in the bank. Feel confident, prepared, and in control with physical gold and silver. Give Joe Morgan a call at 1-800-753-8534. Mention Frank Mottek, and you could get $1,000 worth of silver with a qualifying purchase. Call now, 1-800-753-8534, or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com.
Hey there, I'm Paula Pan, host of the Afford Anything podcast. I help people make the smartest money decisions possible. How should that money get invested? Why value? Why not growth? We're going to answer all of these questions.
All of them?
All of them! From investing strategies and the thing about tariffs to economic trends and beyond.
In one episode.
In one episode. Can you believe it?
I got to ask for a raise.
What's 5% of zero?
Oh, crap.
Afford Anything. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.